Hello there, my name is Liz, I'm from Applejack Crafts and I'm here today to show you how to set up a wet palette for your acrylic paints. And these wet palettes are used primarily to stop the paint drying out. So if you're working on a project for a period of time, you want to come back to it day after day, then use a wet palette and you won't have to keep throwing away those dried up blobs of paint. First of all, most wet palettes you will see in the shops like this. This is one that you can buy and it's made up of the plastic container and a sponge inside that you run under the tap, and so it's nice and wet, not dripping but just nice and damp. Then what you would do with that is take a piece of the palette paper that it comes with, again run it under the tap so it's nice and damp, place that on the top, and then you take your paint and squeeze out your puddle onto the paint, and then it's ready for you to use. Then when you finish painting for the day, you would just snap the lid on like this and put it away, and it should keep nice and fresh in that container for a period of up to about 2 to 3 weeks. Some people actually do suggest putting it in the fridge, which also will help keep it nice and fresh. All you need to do is periodically take the lid off. If you've not used it for a while, lift up the bit of paper and just check that the sponge is nice and wet underneath, and that will keep your paint nice and fresh. Alternatively, if you don't want to go and buy a ready-made paint palette, a cheaper way of actually achieving the same thing is to take any old plastic container. This one has my son's name on it still from, he used it as a lunchbox when he went on a camping trip. But this type of container with a lid or anything like this that you might get a takeaway in, for example, is quite useful recycling. So what you would do is, you don't need the actual container, is you take the lid, and then what you would place on that is something that would basically keep the paint nice and wet. Now you can use a variety of different things for that. One thing that people like to use is just an old J cloth or cotton damp cloth, and again you'd run it under the tap so it's nice and damp and place it on the lid like that. Now the only thing with this is obviously you can put the paint straight on the top of that, but obviously that means that at some point you're going to have to wash it all out. The other way of doing that is to put a piece of greaseproof paper or palette paper, as we used before, around it, and then the damp cloth underneath will keep the paints nice and fresh and moist. The other thing people like to use is blue towel or shop towel, which you can get here. It's quite heavy duty, thick paper towel, and you can usually rinse this out under the tap and reuse it. So again, nice and damp, just put it under the tap and rinse it and wring it out so it's not soaking wet. Then you will put your puddles of paint on it as you would normally, and then at the end of your painting session you take the box part and just click it on the top like so, and it clicks and it's nice and airtight, and it will keep your paint nice and fresh. Similarly, as before, if you want to remove your lid, and then you would very carefully lift this up, and you could actually just put a little bit of water underneath to soak up, and that will help keep your paints moist for a little bit longer. Anyway, that is 2 different types of wet palette that you can use for your painting projects, which will keep your paints nice and fresh. Thank you very much. See you again next time.